So hi, I'm Emma Cook, I am the Tiny Turner, and we are going to be going through a project today which is one of my favourite projects to make. We're going to be turning a small bowl, but a very deep bowl, and then we're going to embellish it with some hand carving texture and some chameleon colours. So the timber that we're using today is walnut, and the size of this blank is 150 centimetres in diameter and 100 centimetres deep. You do need quite a deep blank for this particular project because the texture and the colour, it looks better on the outside if you get a nice steep curve, and this will definitely give us that. So I'm going to find the centre on both sides of this, then we're going to put it between centres on the lathe, turn it round, put a chucking point on, and then we can start to turn the underneath of the bowl. So we're going to be using a 3/8 bowl gouge for this with a traditional grind, and we're just going to use that to rough out the outside and then start to cut the front face. So now we've got a tenon on, we can take this out from between centres and put it into the chuck, and then we can turn the bottom and the outside of the bowl. At this stage, if you want to bring the tailstock up for extra support, you can, but it will get in the way quite quickly because we need to get the foot turned. We're going to have a decorative foot on here, and then we're going to be shaping the outside of the bowl. So I'm actually going to remove the tailstock for now. So I'm moving on now to a 1/4 inch bowl gouge because it's got a shorter handle, but it's a little bit more manoeuvrable, and we can get all the work that we need done with this tool. So now we're going to use the Pro Sander and sand the outside of this before we turn it round and turn the inside. So now we're going to put some finish on the outside of this before we turn it round. So we're going to use these sanding waxes and some microcrystalline wax. exactly the same way. And now we're going to put some microcrystalline wax on. Now with microcrystalline wax, you put it onto the piece and you leave it 10 to 15 minutes before you actually buff it to a shine. It needs 10 to 15 minutes to start to cure. So now this has had 10-15 minutes just to start to cure, we can now polish it. So I've just put the tool rest back in place because we need to cut 2 V-cuts in this. That will become clear towards the end, but we want to do it now before we turn the bowl round to make sure that they're equal depth all the way around. So we'll cut those, and we're just going to use a parting tool at 45 degrees and just use the corner of the parting tool to cut these V-cuts. The reason that we cut these V-cuts after we've put all the finish on is because we don't want to cut them and then put wax on. It will all build up in there and we need to glue something into there, so we don't want any finish on there for now. Once they're cut, we can now turn this round, so we can reverse it and we can do the inside. This band will be carved, so we're going to hand carve texture it, but I do that last after all the turning's finished because you don't want to spend time carving and then have a catch and spoil the bowl after doing all that work. So do the carving last, finish the turning first. So we're going to use a 1/4 inch bowl gouge to hollow this out. It's got a short handle, so it's nice and manoeuvrable. We are undercutting to begin with, so we're actually going to cut underneath and around. And for that, we need to make sure that we come right over here when we're making that cut. You can always move the headstock, so you can bring the headstock round if it makes it easier for you, but the angle of the tool to the wood remains the same no matter where you turn that. So make sure that you are in a comfortable position. So we have a very short bevel on here, 40 or 50 degrees or so. I'm not 100% sure because I hand sharpen. And then we've taken the heel away. So we've ground a second bevel to take that heel away. And that allows us to go around a corner a little bit better without the heel pushing into the wood and bruising it. Now you might notice as I've been cutting this, and even when it first started, when the lathe first started up, once we turned the bowl round, that it's moved out of true. Now I've tried to true it up by loosening the chuck and moving it slightly, but the blank has actually gone slightly oval, which is quite common for cross-grain pieces. So that wobble on there that is caused from it being oval is why we have to cut these before we turn it round. Otherwise there would be different depths around the piece because you'd be trying to cut a circle into an oval. Moving up now to a larger ball blank, so this is a 1/2 inch. The reason being that we're getting quite a bit of vibration with the smaller tool because it's reaching a long way over the tool rest. So we've gone up to a slightly larger tool. As well as going up a tool size, we're also starting to micro bevel. So we've got 3 bevels on here now. We've got the main bevel, which is at the cutting edge, and then we've got 2 more here where the heel would be, just to try and make it go around that corner a little bit better and just prevent the heel bruising in the wood. Now the inside is turned, we need to sand and finish that. And once we've completed the finishing of the inside of the bowl, we can then start to put our texture on with our carving chisels. So we're going to stick to the Pro Sander for sanding the inside. Be very careful not to let too much heat build up with the Pro Sander or any kind of mechanical sanding when you are turning a cross grain blank that's got really high sides, because you have a lot of end grain which can heat check. So just be very, very careful at this stage. You can keep the speed relatively high that you're sanding at, but just keep letting it all cool down. Cool. For the inside, I'm going to use a food safe, it's a mineral oil that's food grade, and we're going to put that inside the bowl and on the edge here because it means that if this bowl is then used for snacks, it's completely food safe. You can finish it with whatever you would like. You can use the same method as the outside, but I like, because this is walnut, walnut looks beautiful finished with an oil, so it would be a shame not to finish it that way. So food safe oil, and we're just going to use some paper towel to apply that to the inside. Once the bowl is turned completely and we sanded it and put our finish of choice on there, now we can move on to the texturing, which we're going to use some hand carving chisels for. So this set is by Stubai. So we're going to use the widest of the gouges. This one is a number 8. And this is perfect for the texture that we are going to do on this bowl. When we are using these chisels, we hold them with 2 hands, but we don't rest the chisel on the tool rest like we do with a bowl gouge or a spindle gouge. We rest our hand on the tool rest, and so that we are holding the chisel completely in our hands. One hand goes on the shank, the other hand on the handle, so that you can twist the tool as you cut with it. When you start to cut a cross grain blank, try and find where the end grain begins and is going downhill. So this is the length grain or the side grain. We don't want to start here, we want to start just past it. And we're going to lock the spindle. So as we push into the wood, we twist the handle. And we get texture that looks like it's been hit with a hammer, so a hammered finish. So we're just going to do that over and over, all the way around that band. Oh, missed a bit. So when we're starting to cut into the end grain that's coming up to our side grain, or the length grain here, we need to change the angle of the chisel so that we're not pushing into the end grain and lifting it. So we're going to move from diagonally to straight across for this section here. Just a little bit. It will change the direction of the texture, but it doesn't matter too much. Now once we've got past the length grain part and we're back onto cutting with the direction of the end grain, so we're cutting downhill again, we can change back to cutting slightly more diagonally. It gives a much cleaner cut and is a lot easier. Now all the turning and the carving is complete, we can start to colour our texture. So the first thing we're going to use is some black acrylic paint, and we're going to cover all the texture with the black acrylic paint. Once that's dried, we then apply some metal leaf size, let that dry, and once it dries it becomes tacky and sticky. We can then apply some of these chameleon flakes over the top, which will give a really vivid and bright finish that colour changes depending on what angle you look at it. And then to complete the whole thing and just finish it off, we're going to glue some leather cord into the V-grooves that we cut earlier. So they will sit into that V-groove. And we will glue this on with a fabric glue. So now we've coated all the texture with some black acrylic paint and that's dried, we can move on to the next stage. So we're going to take some metal leaf size. This is a glue which is used traditionally for sticking metal leaf onto surfaces, but we are going to be using it with something slightly different. So we're going to paint this on. It takes 10-15 minutes to dry and reach its tack point, so that's the point it becomes sticky. And then we're going to put some of these on. So these are my own brand of chameleon flakes. If we take one out, I think we will go with a nice bright green to go complement the walnut. So these are flakes and they change colour depending on what angle you look at them. So whichever way the light catches them makes them change colour. And that is what we're going to decorate our texture with. So we're using the same brush, we've cleaned the brush, So we're just going to paint the size on top of the black paint. You don't need anything else between them. And you want a nice thin coating. Once the size is dry and is sticky, we are going to now brush the flakes onto that size. So you don't mix these in with anything, you use them completely dry. You just need a fluffy brush to pick them up with. So we dip the brush in, and as you can see, they are completely dry, nothing else in there. Pick some up on the brush and then just carefully brush those onto the size. So once we've applied our flakes, we just leave this for a couple of hours and really let that size dry as much as possible. You can leave it overnight, that's probably better. We're going to clean up all the loose bits, just taking a cloth and wiping that away. You don't need to worry about wiping the band because it won't come off, it's stuck on there properly. Now I prefer to leave this as the final finish. I don't like to put anything over the top. If you have ever worked with metal leaf or gold leaf or anything like this which is reflective, if you spray lacquer over it or put wax or oil over the top, it will dull the effect. So it won't change the colour, but it won't be as bright. So I prefer to leave this. Now sometimes the size will stay sticky. So once you've left it 24 hours, it might still feel tacky to touch. If that happens, you can take some gloss lacquer, acrylic, melamine, just a gloss lacquer, and spray a very light coat over this from about 30 centimetres away. So you're not putting a proper lacquer coat on. It won't affect whatever finish you've got on the wood. It's just to keep things in place and take away that sticky feeling. If it's dried enough, you don't need anything at all. Now the colour is applied, everything's dry, we've got one last thing to do to finish this off, and that is to add our leather cord. This is 2mm leather cord. You can get this in lots of different colours. This is a coppery colour, and we're going to glue this into those little V grooves that we cut earlier with some fabric glue. You can use other glues, but some of them, CA glue for example, can leave a white mark. So I prefer a fabric glue with a long applicator nozzle. So the first thing we're going to do is cut the end of the leather from a 90-degree angle to a 45-degree angle. It's easier to hide the join with a 45-degree angle. We are going to run a thin bead into this V groove. If it misses a couple of areas, don't worry. And then we can take the leather and just press that down onto the glue. You may get areas where the glue comes out. Don't worry, we'll clean that up later once the glue is dry. And then cut the leather, push that together. There you go. Then we can do the same in the second V groove. And then once the glue has dried a little bit, we can just remove these little areas where it's touching or where it's overspilled. And because it's microcrystalline wax, it's quite easy to just scrape that away. So as I said at the start of the video, this is one of my favourite pieces to make. I love making these little bowls. They are really good fun. I love making the texture and the colouring, and yeah, they're really useful little bowls to have around your home. So I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I enjoyed filming it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can see more videos with me and other turners, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up on the way out. Drop a comment below if you've enjoyed it, and see you in the next video.